I'm here to briefly explain to us the process of food digestion in man. What is digestion? Digestion is one of our catabolic process in which large molecule of food substance is broken down into simpler form for easy absorption. Now let's look at the digestive system in man. This is the structure of a digestive system. Now we start with a nasal cavity. Nasal cavity. Nasal cavity can also serve as the food passage in some cases, particularly during when there is esophagitis, that is inflammation of esophagus. When food cannot pass through the mouth, the food can still pass through the nasal cavity into the gut. Now we have the mouth as a point of food injection. Now when I'm talking about the mouth, some people believe that mouth is an organ. No, mouth is not an organ. It's just an entrance into the what? Into the gut, and we refer to it as a buccal cavity. Within the mouth, we have certain structures in the mouth. And what are these structures? We have the teeth. We have teeth in the mouth. We have hard and soft palate. We have hard and soft palate. We have the tongue. Now we have the uvula, and we have salivary glands. These are the structures found in the mouth. To start with, the teeth, hard palate and soft palate performs almost the same function as they ensure the mechanical process of food digestion by grinding the food into simpler form. Now we have the salivary gland. Salivary in man, there are 3 types of salivary gland. We have parotid salivary gland, we have sublingual and submaxillar. These 3 glands secrete a substance, a liquid substance called saliva. Within the saliva, there are 2 things mostly present in saliva, or let's say there are 3 components of the saliva. In saliva, there is what we call water, there is mucin, and there is a digestive enzyme called salivary amylase, or we refer to it as taurine. So this, like the issue of the taurine now, taurine is one that first ensures the breaking down of the starch in the mouth, as it partially hydrolyzes the starch into maltose in the mouth. At the same time, it is a function of the mucin to lubricate the food for easy swallowing, while the function of the water contained in the saliva is to soften the food for easy swallowing as well. At the same time, we have what we call the uvula. Uvula is a finger-like structure that hangs at the roof of our mouth. It is one that blocks the nasal cavity during the swallowing so that the food will not pass through our mouth coming out. Now, we also have the epiglottis. Epiglottis is also a finger-like structure that its own function is to partially cover the larynx and allow for the passage, or let's say, and lead the food into the pharynx. Pharynx is the right passage of the food, while the larynx is for the passage of the gas, which leads into our lungs. Now, here we can simply say we have our larynx. Here we have our pharynx. Now, when the food gets into the pharynx is just like a small gut that leads into the gillet or esophagus. Now means here we have our gillet, or we call it esophagus. Gillet or esophagus is the one that leads the food from the mouth into the stomach. But here, as the food is just passing through this gillet, it passes in a wave-like structure that the process is called peristalsis. Now, when the food gets into this place, there is terminal neck of the gillet that we call it cardiac sphincter. It is this cardiac sphincter that regulates the amount of the food that gets into our stomach. Mind you, this cardiac sphincter is stimulated to open when the food touches the back of our tongue. That is when we use to stimulate the vomiting. when we touch the back of at the back of our tongue, it is possible that there will be churning movement of the stomach as a result of opening of this cardiac sphincter. Now, for after food leaving the cardiac sphincter, it enters into our stomach. Now, when the food enters into the stomach, initially we said the food will be mixed up with the saliva here, and when the food, a morsel of the food has been mixed up with the saliva, is turned to what we call a bolus. The food turns to bolus. It is now the bolus that will now get into our stomach. When the bolus gets into the stomach, in the stomach has a muscular wall which is very thick, and this muscular wall has the ability to produce a gastric juice. This gastric juice contains two enzymes, and what are these enzymes? That is where we have a renin and we also have the pepsin. Now, also contained in this our stomach is what we call hydrochloric acid. It is the function of this hydrochloric acid to stop the activities of taurine in the food, and at the same time, hydrochloric acid can also serve as zymogen that we refer to as enzyme activator. Immediately food gets into the stomach, it is the function of this hydrochloric acid to now help convert inactive pepsinogen into pepsin. Then the pepsin will now act on the protein contained in the food as it converts that protein into peptone. Now the function of the renin as the second enzyme found in the stomach is to help to coagulate or curdle the milk and that one is very common in a child, or less in a lactating child. Now, after the food now gets into the stomach, the food now turns to what we call a can. It becomes a semi-solid substance called what? Called a can. Now a can will now have to move from this our stomach and get into this terminal neck of the stomach that we refer to as pyloric sphincter. Pyloric sphincter. The function of the pyloric sphincter is to open and close intermittently so as to release the food into the common duct. Here we have our common duct. Why do we call it a common duct? It is a common duct because it is one that leads from the stomach. It leads from the stomach, and let's say it connects the stomach, it connects our pancreas, at the same time it also connects the bile duct. Here we have our pancreas. Here we have our liver. Then we call this one gallbladder. Let's briefly explain the function of the gallbladder in food digestion. We have the gallbladder as it contains the bile. It passes through what we call a bile duct and ends up, and let's say an empty into this common duct. It ends up in common duct. When the bile gets into the common duct, it meets with the food containing the acid, and that acid must not escape into the small intestine as it can easily break the wall of the small intestine. Now it is now the function of the bile, as it is alkaline in nature, to stop the activities of acid containing in the food. That is number one of its function. Number two of its function is that if the food contains the fat, it is the function of this bile to do what? To help convert the bile, that is to emulsify the fat, which means it breaks down the fat into droplets for easy digestion. That's number two of its function. Number three of its function is that it is the function of the bile to do what? To help us prevent the food decay while in the guts. Now, for the issue of the pancreas, we do refer to pancreas, gallbladder, and liver as accessory organs of food digestion. What is the function of the pancreas here? It is known to us that pancreas can serve as a endocrine gland, as it's capable of secreting both enzymes and hormone. But in the case of digestion now, pancreas will secrete 2 or 3 enzymes. And what are these enzymes? Enzyme number 1 is amylase. Enzyme number 2 is lipase, while enzyme number 3 is trypsin. The function of trypsin in the food is to act on protein and helps convert the protein into peptone. While the function of the amylase is to act on the carbohydrate as it converts the carbohydrates into maltose. While the function of the lipase there, it is the function of the lipase to act on the fat and oil and convert them into fatty acid and glycerol. Now, when the food now gets into this small intestine, when it gets into the small intestine has 3 portions. The first portion, or the first part of the small intestine, is what we refer to as duodenum. We have duodenum. Duodenum is the first part in which digestion of the digestion of the carbohydrates, protein and fat and oil take place as a result of activities of the 3 enzymes released by the pancreas. Now, after food leaves the small intestine, the other part, the second division of small intestine, is what we call jejunum. Inside the jejunum, small amount of digestion also take place in the jejunum. Now, the last one that connects to the large intestine is what we call ileum. No digestion really take place in ileum. As duodenum and jejunum, after the food has been digested, that is where the absorption of the food will take place, because of the fact that they contain a finger-like structure that we call filling. It is where the digestion of the food will take place. The absorption of the food takes place in the what? In the filling. Now, we now have the ileum. Ileum is one that now collects all undigested food into the large intestine. As food is getting into the large intestine, the first part of the large intestine is what we call caecum. That is what we refer to as our caecum. What is that the function of the caecum? Some people believe that caecum has no function of its own as regard food digestion. No. Caecum also helps us contain certain bacteria. There are some bacteria contained in our caecum. And let me give examples of these bacteria. It is inside the caecum and inside the appendix that we have. This is what we call appendix, that we have a common, this kind of a common bacteria called Escherichia coli is found in the caecum. We have Bacteroides found in the caecum, and we also have Acidophilus. All these 3 types of bacteria are found in the what? In the caecum and appendix. And what is their function there? They are the one that help us digest the fats. There are some fat that may not be fully digested in the small intestine. But when we get into the caecum, because there is nothing like digestion in large intestine, but there are some these bacteria that help digest the fat in the what? In the large intestine. So when they digest the fat, they also make use of that energy provided or produced in that process of digestion of the fat. They make use of it, and at the same time, the food will also be useful to the large intestine. Now, we now have what we call the appendix. Appendix is the terminal end of the large intestine, and no digestion takes place there except the digestion that occur as a result of activities of these certain bacteria like Escherichia coli, Acidophilus, and Bacteroides that take place in the appendix. And when there is deposition of the stones, or let's say the grains inside this appendix, it can become inflamed. And when it becomes inflamed, the inflammation of the appendix is what we refer to as appendicitis, which can be surgically removed by a process called appendectomy. Now, when the food now leaves the undigested food in the large intestine, first reach what we call ascending colon. Now, after leaving the ascending colon, it comes to what we call transverse process. Transverse, or let's just refer to it as transverse colon. We call it transverse colon because generally the large intestine could be referred to as colon. The whole thing here we refer to as a small intestine. If you don't forget this is what we call small intestine. Now, for the continuation of this one, we can now refer to this one as descending colon. Descending colon. This is descending colon. Then we have what we call sigmoid colon. Sigmoid colon. Then we have our rectum. After having our rectum, we have our anus. That is where that is where undigested food will pass through, and it's come out in form of feces. This is briefly explanation on food digestion. Till we meet again, I still remain my name, Senator Idris Irilakatabu. Thanks.